Hi, Sam Baxendale here, co-founder and director of Kinetic Hiring. So for today's second installment of Insight on Demand, we're going to be interviewing the CEO and founder of MyMy, Joe Maguire. Joe Maguire's had an amazing journey coming to Malaysia and launching a pure play digital bank, and that's been an amazing journey, and he's going to share everything about that with you guys today. Joe, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. So for the benefit of the audience, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, what have you been up to, what have you been building here in Malaysia?
So Sam, I'm the co-founder of a Malaysian fintech called MyMy. We are working towards building one of the region's premier digital banks. But I should preface that by saying we're not actually applying for the current digital banking license here.
Okay.
We have received conditional approval for a large scheme e-money license.
Fantastic.
And becoming a digital bank is sort of the end game a couple of years down the track. For us, it's about building a customer base first, understanding deeply what those customers love about our brand, and evolving from there, as opposed to putting down the significant regulatory capital that comes with becoming a digital bank.
Awesome.
So my background has mostly been in banking.
Yeah.
My last role in banking was running the transaction banking division for the biggest bank in Australia. That is cards, cash management, online payments. It's about 76 products.
Cool.
So I was quite young in that role, and that's where I learnt probably the hard way the realities of leadership and what's right and what's wrong to do, though I'm still always learning and evolving.
Yeah.
A couple of really good years running that division there, I stepped out to join a fintech. At the time, that was a really little fintech. There was about 7 staff there, and that fintech is now a household brand today. It's now a $5 billion company called Airwallex.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely heard of them.
Yeah, so I was there from the early stages with Airwallex. I was their global head of sales and partnerships.
Yep.
And that was like my school.
Yep.
That was my learning about the realities of building a financial services business, about dealing with regulators, the complexities of technology, and also just the international expansion for a business like that.
Yep.
And while I was there, I was in Jakarta, and we were working on getting a license over there, and I came across this problem that consumed me. And that was, at the time, we're talking 2018, at the time there was about 500 million people in Southeast Asia that had a phone, but had never had a bank account. And I just felt like if you were going to throw 100% of your life savings and invest 100% of your effort into solving a problem, that was a worthy problem.
Fantastic. So in terms of a product, obviously very clear. I think the thing that a lot of people listening might be interested in is why Malaysia? What made you decide on solving that problem in Malaysia, for instance?
Yeah, sure. And it's a worthy question. So when we were looking at where to start in Southeast Asia, the obvious choice is Indonesia because of the huge population there. But as we delved deeper into it, I felt like the timing for that market wasn't exactly right. So at the time, the biggest selling phone in Indonesia was still BlackBerry. And I felt that, when you're trying to build a business and bring it to market, changing customer behavior is a major challenge. And I just felt that at the time, Indonesia was probably a couple of years away from being ready for a product like MyMy. And then if you go to the other end of the scale, I felt like Singapore was probably too small a population, but there was already a number of players circling, like Revolut and TransferWise. And to me, Malaysia just seemed like the perfect balance of timing and regulation as well. So, we were looking at the Malaysian market then, and there was 1.4 debit cards per person in the country. So from a changing of customer behavior perspective, it told me that people are comfortable with having a MasterCard in their wallet. But even though there was 1.4 debit cards per person at the time, there was only 8% of transactions that were digital. And the rest was cash. And so we felt like, if everyone's got a debit card in their pocket, are they not using it? Maybe it's that there's a lack of quality solution. And that's where we felt MyMy could fill the gap.
Fantastic. Moving on to the topic of talent. So you've been, over the course of the last 2-3 years? Been building a platform, technology-wise, product-wise, etc. It'd be interesting to get your perspective on the general picture here in terms of talent, availability of talent. What's your top level observation on that?
Yeah, I mean, There's an old rule in the startup world that if you want to build a successful business, you have to be in Silicon Valley.
Right.
And while there's a number of exceptions to that rule, what it's really referring to is two key things that you need when you're building a business. One is access to talent, and two is access to investors. Why is Silicon Valley like the great place to do it? I think it's because they've had a number of success stories already, and that proliferates more startups, and that builds an ecosystem. For Malaysia, that's a much bigger challenge. For example, even though Malaysia as a government is very receptive towards you launching a business over here, and they've got a number of really great programs, including MDEC, who's always been a huge supporter of us. What you need is competence before confidence, right? And so, you know, in Silicon Valley, there's 50 guys that have built businesses like this that understand the challenges of the journey and the difficulties of building a startup. Our ambition has been to build that ecosystem in Malaysia.
Okay.
We want to keep all of our jobs in Malaysia. A lot of the big tech companies like Grab outsource all their high engineering jobs to Singapore, and we don't think that's of benefit to Malaysia.
Okay.
And we're called My for My Malaysia. And so our ambition is to build everything here. What you do need though to upskill all of our Malaysian talent coming in is you do need a couple of foreigners that have built this before to come in and get that done.
Yes.
And so we have a constant challenge between finding like the right people to come in, getting visas approved for a couple of those experts, to then work with the Malaysian talent pool, which is readily available, but they just need some international guidance. Again, competence before confidence.
And based on that strategy and based on that picture, has that got you to where you need to be, or close to at least?
No, it's a work in progress.
Right. Okay.
It's a constant challenge for us, made much harder by the pandemic. One of our key engineers that was slated to come across to Malaysia actually had a really bad issue of COVID with his wife and the family, and he can't come across. So yes, the pandemic has exacerbated the challenges of hiring. It's been a horrible thing for the world, but it has also shown the world and shown the Malaysian market the importance of digital financial services.
Yes. So Joe, we talked earlier just about the bigger picture in terms of the talent ecosystem in Malaysia, drawing a little bit more attention to detail specific role types that you're hiring for. Could you give us a bit of an overview on which areas in particular are tough and just talk us through that? That would be interesting to hear.
I think it's always around engineering, which is the difficult hires here. There's no shortage of Malaysians coming out of university that are smart and capable. But it's really about, you know, if you're doing something for the first time, getting some senior level guidance. So finding a balance of being able to bring in some talent that's going to upskill the population, I think is an area where there could be improvement in the market. I mean, if you look at the US, right? So we've got Tesla and SpaceX, Elon Musk, originally from South Africa. You look at the CEOs of MasterCard, Google, they're all foreigners that now live in the US, they're residents, they pay their tax there. And so I think it's important that you create an environment where people can come in to work in businesses that aren't necessarily Malaysian, but will make a life in the future.
Of course.
And the proliferation of having a couple of those senior talents coming in is to the benefit of every young Malaysian that aspires to build their own business.
Absolutely.
So for us, I think, you know, we love it here and we have great relationships with the government agencies that are doing a fantastic job. But I think that there should be more openness around people making a life in Malaysia. And I think that would benefit the broader community as opposed to take away jobs, which is sometimes the concern, and in some ways a reasonable concern. But I think in the startup world, with all the talent that we have in Malaysia, it's about giving them the right mentors to learn from. And if a business like that has never been built in Malaysia, those mentors are few and far between. So keeping the doors open in Malaysia is absolutely crucial for building that startup ecosystem. I think it's absolutely crucial to benefit the younger aspirational Malaysians.
Absolutely. So that's kind of a systemic point, I guess, drawing more on your specific experiences. Can you comment on things that might make a business more appealing than others in terms of attracting and retaining that talent that you refer to? Are there any particular pointers there?
I think that one of the big missed opportunities here, and one of the things that we're really big on with My is that if you look at most of the startup brands that are in the market, most of them aren't actually a startup in the traditional sense. You know, traditional sense of the startup would be a bunch of guys and girls in a garage building something from scratch, right? And we always say, like, in Malaysia, startups don't start in garage, they start in a mamak store. I think that's the Malaysian way. But most of the brands here are actually subsidiaries of large corporations. You know, you have Big Pay, who are doing a fantastic job, who are owned by AirAsia, and Boost, who are owned by Axiata. And so one of the missed opportunities here is that because they're subsidiaries of large corporations, there's very little opportunity to remunerate those staffs with equity in the company. And so at MyMy, one of my key principles is that everyone that works at MyMy, passes probation, owns a share in the company. And I think that's a really important thing because we're all invested in the success of the business.
Absolutely.
And invested in the outcome.
Yeah.
And at times when you're building a business like ours, it's more than just a job. Now, I want everyone in the business to act like they're a business owner.
Yes.
Very flat structure. If I'm doing something wrong, I want people to tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you sort of crystallize that when you're interviewing people? How do you sort of make that really clear and apparent so people are drawn in by that?
Well, I think it's about consistency. So, I think anyone that's applying for a role will reach out to other people that work there. Often it's word of mouth if they'll hear about the business.
Yeah.
And so for everyone in our business that's passed probation, they're effectively a business owner in MyMy as well.
Awesome.
And so by having that as the standard rule, what we'll generally do is we'll hire someone, they'll run through a 6-month probationary period. And based on their role within the business, their performance over that 6 months, we'll then put them on a 4-year employee share options plan.
Fantastic.
So if I know they're hungry for the job, I know they can present an idea and they take feedback, and generally they'll be a really good employer.